Hi, everybody. It's Bill Whittle, and welcome to Bill Whittle Live. We are just about on our way here. Yeah, it looks like we're streaming live on Facebook, and it's a pleasure to be here for, I guess it's about the third or fourth show that we're doing, something like that. Before we get into our topics today, there's a couple of pieces of interesting news. Good news, I think, technically. We should have the dark wallpaper up today, and also we're getting some electronics that'll help us do actual cameras and get rid of these webcams. But so far, so good, and I think the show's looking a little bit better every day, and that's always good news. But in any event, we are here today on the 25th of January to talk about the two events that seem to be leading the news today. One of them is that Donald Trump has signed an executive order to start work on the wall that he talks so much about. And then we'll talk also about the Dow Jones breaking 20,000 and what that could mean just in terms of the overall economy and all the rest of it. So here we are. And let's get going. Okay, the wall. Donald Trump has decided to, actually I think later today he's going to sign executive orders, if he hasn't done it already, to start construction of that southern wall, that beautiful wall, that big beautiful wall that he talks about so much. And I say, wow. You know, the first thing Barack Obama did when he got into office was he signed an executive order for the closure of Guantanamo Bay. He did it on the first day. But 8 years later, 9 years later, Guantanamo Bay is still open, and thank God that it is. Donald Trump is moving quickly on these things, and he certainly seems to be taking his campaign promises pretty seriously. The thing I think that's most interesting about this act of actually starting the wall is the message that it sends. He's been acting very quickly in order to basically make it pretty clear he's going to do what he said he was going to do. The main thing about this wall, I think, is the optics of it and how it plays with the rest of the world. I don't think anybody really has not anybody thinking anyway, has any serious question about the need for it. So what is it about the wall that's so controversial? Well, the left will have you believe that the wall is an indication of Fortress America and that we have lost our openness towards immigrants, and that it's the end of the American dream, and it's nothing but racist and all the rest. I say it's exactly the opposite of that. You know, we didn't have a wall across our southern border for virtually all of our national existence, because for virtually all of our national existence, we haven't needed one. The creation of having to build an actual wall on our southern border is not the result of sudden xenophobia on the part of the American citizen. It's the part it's the responsibility. It's the result of unlimited illegal immigration over the last 8 years, and not the last, it's really probably the last 20, 30 years, but enormously ramped up by this president. And there's actually a strange analogy here with the street violence that we see in his inaugurations. And we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we saw with Occupy Wall Street. It's the same kind of a thing, and it's a result of the Obama presidency and its priorities, and in fact its philosophy. So let's just backtrack a little bit. Barack Obama was a president who came to us from the Senate, and before he was a senator, he was a community organizer, which we used to call rabble-rousers. These guys that go into the communities and gin up some resentment and some anger and get some things going. That's not to say that there aren't legitimate problems in the inner city. And it's not to say that there's not a cause for or some kind of case for people organizing for a better life. But basically, these progressives need a radical cause. They need to get people angry and excited and ginned up and violent almost. So for the last 8 years, we have not seen anybody arrested for these flagrant transgressions of civil law. When the Occupy Wall Street movement started, they weren't confined to street demonstrations. They simply parked themselves in front of people's buildings. And, we heard stories in New York about Occupy Wall Street people defecating in hallways and on police cars and so on. Nothing was done to them. They didn't suffer any consequences. The federal government or the state government or the local government didn't go in there and clear out these people who are not protesting. They're occupying a city. They're doing it illegally. They're smashing buildings. They're burning cars. What was the government's response to all of this? The government's response on the part of the Obama administration was pretty much, congratulations, well done. Let's keep up the pressure. And so if you don't have any consequences for smashing windows and burning cars in America, if there's no consequences, if all you get is some press time, guess what you're going to get more of? And the same exact situation happened on our southern border, and for the same reasons. The president was in favor of illegal immigration. He made it crystal clear that he was in favor of illegal immigration, and the more the better. One of the things that happens kind of under the radar at the end of a president's term is he just opened the floodgates on this thing, and it just got worse and worse. I was hearing it was 40,000 a day or something like that. The wall is necessary because the politics of the wall made it necessary. That's really the reason that we have to build this thing now, is because for so many decades now, the federal government, but especially during the last 8 years, has basically let that little crack, which used to be a reasonable amount of illegal immigrants. When I say a reasonable amount, I mean an amount that was insignificant to national policy. There's the kind of thing as somebody traipsing across your lawn in the suburbs. It doesn't happen very often. But when it became clear that there were not going to be any consequences to immigrating into America illegally, as a matter of fact, not only were there not going to be any negative consequences, but that the federal government was going to be there to step up right away and get you all of your benefits and your driver's license and all the rest of it. Well, when that happened, it's like a crack in a dam. It's like any other fissure where there's a great deal of pressure on one side and essentially no counter pressure on the other. Once that immigration flow started, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger it got, it seemed to me, the more Washington liked it, the more the Obama administration was happy. So, this is what you get when this is what you do. So really, if you want to put if you're one of those progressives who feel like the optics of this or the morality of it or the philosophy of it is disgraceful and repulsive, well, to the degree that it is, it's your fault. If we'd enforced the border, if we'd actually enforced the border while it was a border, we wouldn't have to build a wall. But now, after 8 years, it's become crystal clear to everybody in the world, especially the Mexican government and the Mexican people, that all you have to do is make the trip. And if you happen to be caught, we'll put you on a bus and send you back. But for the last year or two, the Obama administration, the federal government, has specifically, explicitly told immigration that they cannot and will not enforce this border. They will not. They've told Border Patrol agents to stand down, do not go out and do your job every day. Simply stop enforcing the border. Why? Why would he do that? Why? Why would Barack Obama do that? Isn't the first real responsibility of the president the protection of the United States and its borders? Isn't that really his primary job? In fact, isn't that the one thing we can pretty much all agree that the federal government is supposed to do? Protect the borders. We need a navy to keep the British away. We need an army to keep those warlike Canadians from descending on us and burning our White House. And other than that, basically enforce the rules and leave us alone. But no, the primary responsibility of the federal government had not only been abrogated by the Obama administration, it had been flouted, it had been destroyed intentionally. I remember one of the things that made me most livid during the Obama administration, and that's quite a list to pick from, was the announcement several years ago that Arizona would not be allowed, the state of Arizona, would not be allowed to enforce its own borders, that the federal government prohibited Arizona from enforcing the state border of Arizona. And so, even though it's a little bit of the wall, I think looks like it's close to San Diego there with the ocean in the background, but you get the idea. So basically what happens is this federal government is telling the states that they can't protect themselves. Anyway, the thing that I was mentioning that makes me most livid is simply this. I remember hearing and then seeing pictures of areas of the United States that were off limits to Americans. They weren't actually prohibited from going there, but they were warned. The federal government did not only not protect the borders, but the federal government had the audacity to put up signs in defiance, or at least without the knowledge of Arizona's governor, that basically said, attention, the area you are about to enter is unsafe for American citizens due to foreign drug trafficking and presence of foreign armed armies on American soil. It's pretty much the Obama administration in a nutshell, isn't it? We have this critical problem, and so let's put up a sign. We have a problem with mass murders. Let's put up a sign. We've got all these issues with gun violence in the cities. Let's not address the gun violence in the cities. Let's remove the gun emojis from the Apple software. That ought to solve the problem. So again, I think it needs to be said and repeated. If you ever find yourself in a direct conversation with one of these progressives or somebody else who just says the whole idea of a wall is repugnant to America, or somebody says we don't have a wall with Canada, then the correct response to this is we don't have a wall with Canada because our Canadian immigration has been perfectly normal. We don't have a huge influx of Canadians coming over the border illegally. They're going to start. We're expecting a wave of Americans crossing the border into Canada, but unfortunately, that beautiful dream never materialized because Rosie O'Donnell and all the rest of them are still here. That's okay. They were allowed to have a few disappointments in the middle of all this winning. So really, I think that's the main point. We have to construct a wall because the politics have forced us to construct a wall. When we were maintaining a border, we didn't need a wall. Now that the entire idea of a border has been laughed at from Washington, and since the people are not allowed to, the states are not allowed to product their own borders, and since immigration's been told you can't do it, now we need a wall. And that's why the wall is so significant, and that's why this executive order matters so much. And that's why so much of what Donald Trump has done so far is actually extremely important, because they're messages that are going out to people who are smart enough to understand them. And the messages are, those days are over. We've got a new way of looking at things now. When I say messages, I mean things like when you make your defense secretary Mad Dog Mattis, the best field commander we've had, best combat commander we've had in a generation. You are telling people, you're telling ISIS and you're telling Syria, you're telling the Russians, you're telling the Chinese, you're telling everybody that this weakness and that this constant doormat policy of the United States is coming to an end now. The defense secretary is not a guy who's going to be primarily concerned with unisex bathrooms on bases across the world. He's going to be primarily concerned with restoring the American military to fighting trim and making it clear that if we have to use it, we are willing to use it, and if we do use it, it's going to be effective. And that's exactly the same thing as the Carrier air conditioning deal, which happened before he was even president. Many people say it's protectionism. Many people say it's a government bailout. Many people say it's all of these things. And some people have done the analysis and said, it's actually going to be worse for not worse for American workers, but Carrier's going to do this or that, and it's all going to end up in Mexico anyway. I don't care. Because what I am good at, I think, is messaging. I understand messaging. I understand storytelling. And what Donald Trump has done since the election, I think, has been absolutely amazing. He has been telling a story that this is going to change, that we are, in fact, going to make this country great again. So this executive order saying that we're going to start construction of a wall really just says to Mexico, it says to the drug runners, it says to the smugglers, it says to all those people who are coming up, not just from Mexico, but from all of South America, that the days of simply crossing into America and walking away are over. And if we don't have a border and we have to have a wall, then why do we need either? That would be the progressive argument. Why even need a border? We've already shown you that we're not going to enforce the border, so why do we even need one? It's all part of the international elitist idea that there are no borders, there are no nations, there is only essentially one giant humanity which will be administered by guess who? If there's no borders, no nations, no nothing like that, if there's only an international governing order, guess who's in charge, and guess who's not elected, and guess who's not responsible to the people all around the world. This has been the plan of the progressives since they really began to take power maybe a decade ago. I mean, really take power. This has been their plan. The EU is a group of unelected, elitist intellectuals who want to run all of Europe without any accountability to the people they represent. It's this elitist attitude that's caused this immigration problem in America. It's the same elitist disconnect. It's the same arrogance, the same awful, just plain condescending sense that we know better than you do what's good for the country that's caused these immigration problems in Europe. And they're mystified. They're utterly mystified that the peasants now have taken up their pitchforks and their torches and are coming into the property and making waves. If these people were accountable to the people they represented, if these governing elites were accountable, we wouldn't have these problems. But the Obama administration governed as if it was never going to, as the Democrats governed as if there was never going to be another Republican president again. And all they did was concentrate power in the hands of the president. And now that the president is Donald J. Trump, they are having themselves a conniption fit. No wonder they're so terrified. So, you can't have a country without a border. People say it, but it's true. It's the difference between a Mexican and an American is the border. And the difference between the law in Mexico and America is the border. And the difference between the corruption in government between Mexico and America is the border. And the difference in language is the border. And the difference in work ethic is the border. And all of that. And it's the progressives that have turned that border into a sieve and caused the creation, the formation of this wall, which apparently got started today, so that's quite a big deal. Okay, a quick commercial before we go into our second segment here. We are actually going to be doing in-segment commercials. If you're interested in that, you can certainly reach us at info@billwhittle.com. But for now, our commercial is for the people that make this program possible, that have been paying for this program paying for this building anyway for years and years, and that is our billwhittle.com membership. It's comes out to about 33 cents a day for the basic membership. It entitles you to watch these programs, including Bill Whittle Live, which will be members only starting, if not next week, then the week after. Once we get it really glassed over and done, it'll start to take a members only position. We'll do a few minutes on Facebook Live so you can see what you're missing. But again, the thing that really impressed me and surprised me was last Wednesday hearing, during the Stratosphere Lounge show, hearing the feedback or watching the feedback come in on the comment stream. And this really actually genuinely surprised me. People just said how good it makes them feel and how it makes them feel like it's fun because they feel like they're doing something. So if you've got an HBO subscription or something like that, I know you get more programming on HBO, but HBO is poisoning the minds of our people, and Netflix largely is too, and all the rest of these subscription services. And we're doing our level best to stop it, and I think we're doing a good job, and I think we're going to do a much better job. As I mentioned yesterday, this is part of the commercial pitch now because it's true. The election of Donald Trump has shattered the liberal narrative, shattered it. It hasn't removed it, hasn't replaced it, but it's shattered it. It is no longer intact. And it's given us an opportunity to go into where that liberal narrative of all of it, from Washington, D.C. Democrats to New York news intellectuals to Hollywood celebrity creeps who control the pop culture, all of this is reinforcing this narrative story of progressivism. And we have had a miracle happen. A thunderbolt has happened. Something has come down and broken this crystal ball that they thought was going to last forever, just shattered it. And something has to move into its place, or else they'll simply reassemble it. They will start to rebuild it. They're rebuilding it now. The counterattack against this thing is going on relentlessly. Donald Trump is being delegitimized every chance they get, which means that the people who voted for them are also being delegitimized every chance they get. And somebody has to go into that vacuum and create the story that we used to have about this country, which is a land of opportunity and freedom and fairness and business and activity and responsibility and all the rest. And somebody's got to tell that story, and I think I'm a really good person to do it. And in order to tell that story and get it seen by people, we need memberships. It's it's a club. It's like anything else. So what club are you a member of right now? This club is doing its level best to get the message out to America and to get people awake to the fundamentals. And I was going to start it this week. I'll start it next week. We're going to start premiering the TPUSA, Turning Point USA videos that we have started on. We finished the first 3, and now we're going to really kick it into high gear. And you'll see from these things that they're simple 3-4 minute concepts. Here's what capitalism is. Here's what socialism is. Here's what money is, and so on. So the people that are a part of this are proud of being a part of it. I'm certainly proud of being a part of it, and we'd love to have you be proud of being a part of it as well. So if you want to head over to billwhittle.com and click on Become a Member, you'll be fighting the forces of darkness with a flaming sword of justice, and I'm not joking about that. I mean, I'm really serious. We have an incredible opportunity now, and we will not be forgiven if we drop it. Okay, on to our second segment, which is the Dow Jones Industrial Average broke 20,000 for the first time today. My understanding, as I recall, was it broke 19,000 2 days after after Trump's election, and now it's up to 20. And I'm not a financial guy. I don't really know anything about finance, but certainly that's not going to stop me from giving you a good solid 7 minutes of opinion as if I did. But there are some things that are interesting about this. All of this deficit spending, which in my mind, the debt, the federal debt, is the only genuine existential threat to America. It's the only thing that I feel can actually destroy the country, is an economic collapse based on $20,000 billion that were printed to pay for programs and to buy votes that didn't exist. But we owe them, and we have to pay them back. When Trump was elected, one of the advocates for this insanity, and let me just stop for a second because that's what it is. This kind of deficit spending is insanity. It's insanity. It's a fig leaf for us being able to say, hey, we want to buy your votes. We want to give you programs. We don't have enough money for it. We're not taking in enough money. And if we raise taxes to pay for this stuff, then the American people would simply riot in the streets. So what we're going to do is we're going to take as much money from you as we think we can get in taxes, and then we're going to just print the rest. And this is just crime. It's just buying. It's counterfeiting, essentially, is what it is. It's a government counterfeiting money. And one of the great advocates of this is this Paul Krugman, who's one of the most self-centered idiots I've ever seen. He absolutely will not give up on this idea. And Paul Krugman will not give up on his economic ideas until he is left out in the street roasting rats on a stick over burning tires because there's no economy left. And probably that won't even do it either. But after Donald Trump was elected, they went to Krugman that night and they said, when will this economy recover from this horrific catastrophe? And Krugman said, I think this is nearly verbatim, my first past answer is never. Well, it turns out it wasn't never. It turned out it was 2 days later. 2 days later that the Dow went and set a record, and it set another record today, 20,000. That's a big number. As I said, I'm not a financial guy, but there are things that I do understand about these things and numbers like that. Watching the Dow just kind of go high is a good measure for people who don't know anything about finance like myself. They look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average as a relative indicator of the nation's financial wealth, financial, not stability so much, but wealth. And to hit a record high like this, especially a nice round number like $20,000, 20,000 is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's another one of these good optical signals. And the fact that it jumped right after Trump was elected is a sign of really good optics as well. I know people say optics is optics, and they say it's just how things appear. But I've watched this country be almost destroyed to the core by people who do nothing but optics, by people who have nothing. Barack Obama is the optics president. It's just so clear to me, especially in retrospect. Barack Obama was about the smile, and he was about being slim and tall, and he was about being kind of a hip urban black guy who could speak well, and he was optics. He was nothing but optics. He was simply style and glamour over actual substance. And when people buy this argument, when people are buying into things like style and substance, and people saying Barack Obama is the greatest president in the last 50 years, what makes you say that? He hasn't accomplished anything. Yeah, but what they really mean is he's cool and he can handle himself at a cocktail party in Cannes. So optics matter, and style matters, and perception not only matters, but perception is everything. That's why we do the work we do here. We're trying to change people's perceptions. So when the Dow hits 20,000, that's a perception that Donald Trump and the new Republican administration is leading the nation towards a healthier future. I wish they'd really start addressing the unemployment issues, the actual unemployment issues. But when Trump does things like talk about making deals to keep Carrier in the country, that's another message that he's been sending. It's a message like the wall's a message. It's a message like Mad Dog is a message. It's a message that says that the federal government is now going to be in the business of trying to keep Americans occupied and not prevent them from being occupied. Now, we all know that's not the federal government's job. The federal government's job is not to arrange deals with Carrier air conditioning, and it's not to set up protectionism and all the rest. It's to defend the borders and enforce a couple of laws. But optically, it's good. In fact, it's very good. And optically, it's important because the Dow Jones Industrial Average represents one thing and one thing only. We think it represents financial value, but it doesn't. What the Dow Jones Industrial Average represents is optimism and confidence and faith. That's what it's a measure of. It's a measure of optimism, confidence, and faith. As long as people perceive these shares, which used to be on, printed documents and now mostly electronic, as long as people believe that these things have value, then actual wealth is created and actual money, actual resources are used to go into corporations and develop things that were never there before, like Uber, for example. But if people lose confidence in these things, you get a crash. And if people completely lose confidence in them, you get a Wall Street crash at 29. Because then everybody realizes that what they've bought is a piece of a company, and what that really means is they bought a share of optimism. They bought a share of belief that the future is going to be better than the present, and that if I put $10 into this now, it's going to be worth more than $10 when I decide to sell it someday. It's pretty much it. So a big Dow Jones Industrial Average indicates some degree of investor confidence, and it indicates a degree of somewhat of at least a successfully moving economy. But we need some real honesty on the actual numbers of what the actual growth is, what the unemployment rate is. But my point is, all of this stuff optically looks good, and it's happening very quickly in terms of historical time. I mean, the election's just a couple months old, and the inauguration's not even a week old as we record this. So if people perceive that things are getting better, then guess what's going to happen? Things are going to get better. That's how it works. It's funny, but that is exactly how it works. When people perceive that a company is going to grow and be worth more money, people put more money into that company, the company gains value, and sure enough, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the inverse is true as well. So it's a good sign. The fundamentals of the economy I do not feel good about at all. But if we're talking about optics, and optics means perception, and perception means votes, and not only votes in political terms, but also votes in terms of where you put your money. Optimism is what we should be selling now. Optimism and capability and hope and confidence. I'm not even calling it hope. Barack Obama offered hope. We're not talking about hope. We're talking about the opposite almost of hope. We're talking about competence. We're talking about competence. We're talking about expectations. We're talking about a level-headed, reality-based view that the future is going to be better than the past, and therefore we're going to invest in it. If that message gets out to the American people in a clear way, and it certainly seems to be, then that means that we're going to see unbelievable economic growth. There's been so much energy that's been stunted and stored by all these taxes and regulations, and we go on and on about this forever. But I personally believe that we're going to see an absolute economic miracle. So far, so good as far as President Trump is concerned. I'd like to see these protectionist policies dealt with downstream, but right now it will behoove the American people, Democrats and Republicans, although it would hurt the Democrats politically enormously. But it would be good for all Americans, for Americans to recover confidence in the country, recover confidence in business, recover confidence in the future, all the rest of it. And of all the things that happened during Trump's inauguration speech, the one thing that just caught me, just absolutely stopped me cold, had nothing to do with any of these soaring rhetorics about what we're going to do together. He simply said, we're going to build roads, we're going to build bridges, we're going to build airports. And I just stopped. I'm just like, we're going to do what? We don't build airports. We close airports. That's what we do in this country. We don't build airports. We close them. And we let them get older. And we knock a few off every month or two. We don't build airports here. And I just suddenly realized, why not? Everything in this office is decorated with the works of Sid Mead, who was a futurist back in the early 60s. And it's about the future. It's about the lost future of things that could happen if we just had the guts. We don't need them. We've got the brains. And we've got the money, and we've got the resources, and we've got the skill. All we need is just the confidence. We just need the confidence to go out and start building things again. What a remarkable, remarkable thing that was, and what a remarkable speech. So it seems to me to be relatively good news. It's refreshing at least to see a president who appears to be keeping his promises. Guantanamo Bay remains open, despite it was the first thing ever signed by Barack Obama. And again and again and again, I'll probably say this all year, every single day that goes by, the vacuum of things that didn't happen during the Obama administration get clearer and clearer and clearer as things begin to return to some sort of sense of actual reality, actual normalcy. So it's an exciting time to be here. It's an exciting time to be in this chair. It's an exciting time to be working with our members out there who not only keep the lights going, but I feel a strong personal affection towards, really genuinely do. So we'd love to have you be part of that as well. That's it. That's a half an hour for Bill Whittle Live on Wednesday, the 25th of January, 2017. We'll be back tomorrow with some new wallpaper. We'll be back with monitors slightly different. We'll be back with better cameras within the next 2 or 3 days or so. So it's just going to get better and better and better. And let's just, I mean, we can agree now that it's spectacular already. So that'll do it for the show today. Again, thanks for joining us here on Facebook Live. We'll keep it Facebook Live for a while, and then we'll do 10 minutes on Facebook and move the rest behind the membership paywall. Until tomorrow, then, I'm your host, Bill Whittle. Thank you very much for joining us. You be careful out there, do good work, love your country, be kind to people, and don't take any crap off of anybody, because this country is starting to swing again.